I'm not sure where all this rain came from. It's supposed to be July. I guess I'll just hunker down here for a bit. I mean, it's not the worst place in the world to be stuck during a rainstorm. Graffiti's not half bad. And you get the nice sounds of the storm drain flowing. The fuck? This looks like it was put here semi-recently. It's not hard or anything. What the fuck? Is it like it's like a DVD binder or something for like old PC games and unsorted horror? Are they like install DVDs or something? Well, I mean, I'm not going to say no to free games. You never know, there might be something really cool on here. Well, that's awfully foreshadowing, isn't it?
The horror genre has been part of pop culture since the invention of the earliest films. As early as the 1930s, companies like Warner Brothers were making films about all kinds of nasties, from Frankenstein to Dracula. As humans, we have always been fixated on being scared. We seek it out on purpose almost. We love being scared. I mean, that's why there are 6 Scream movies and more Halloween movies than I care to remember. One of my favourite ways to seek out this feeling of terror is via video games. Think about it, you combine a genre that's designed to be scary and mix it with an immersive piece of media such as a video game. It's a recipe for success and brown-stained trousers. Some of my favourite games of all time are horror games like Alien Isolation, Outlast, Bendy and the Ink Machine, Resident Evil 7. All of these games are infinitely immersive and just as terrifying as any horror movie. But there's a certain subgenre of horror games that I believe is more interesting than normal AAA horror games, that being old horror games. Many older horror games tend to do horror differently to newer ones. Take Silent Hill 2 for example. This game makes you feel a sense of extreme isolation. It's a genuine relief when you come across another person, but spoiler alert, they're acting just as weird as you are. Amnesia: The Dark Descent does something similar, but instead of being alone, you wish you were alone. Ah, get away from me, you lockjaw looking motherfucker! Due to the reduced graphical fidelity of these older games, as well as the actual horror of the game, it lends to a sense of not belonging. As modern gamers, we are so used to big budget AAA games with jaw-dropping graphics so you can see every imperfection on Alex Mason's face, that the graphics of older games have an uncanny sense to them, especially with games from the PS2 and PS3 era. These people look almost human, but there's something off about them, whether it be bad facial animation or near porcelain skin. And developers have learned to exploit this feeling of fear that we get with older games. If you go onto itch.io, you'll see that literally every indie horror game is a PS1 or PS2 style game with some grotesque horror in it, dipped in 90s graphics rendering and poorly drawn blood textures. Most of these indie games all look and play the same. Oh look, I'm walking through a dark corridor. Oh look, there's a monster with 8 vaginas for a face coming towards me. I'm so scared my trousers are now brown and yellow. But out of all of the PS1 style horror games I've seen, there is one that I discovered very recently that does things differently. Unsorted Horror is an anthology of games developed by Mike Kalumnica. That is so fucking butchered, holy shit. From the period of 2022 to 2023. And there's one thing that makes this collection of horror games stand out. Variety. Each one of these games has a different gameplay loop, setting, and in some cases an entirely different art style. All of these games build up tension and freak me out to no end. I remember thinking as soon as I completed the 5th game, yeah, I need to do a video on this game. 1, because they were all amazing and I just lost my beanbag to a jet of terrified piss. And 2, Steam doesn't hand out those overwhelmingly positive reviews for free. So in this video we're going to look through each game in this collection, talking about their gameplay, their story, and perhaps how they link to one another. At least in the way I think they do. I'm going to do a game theory on this one and make random shots in the dark and hope the developer changes his mind and says yes, that is correct. Because that is basically what happened with all of MatPat's FNAF theories. Scott is not a good storyteller, he's the master of manipulation. He said it himself. He spat out 5 games from 2014 to 2015 and put literally no thought into how the first 4 were linked into each other. The game opens with a box. Punching the code in, we are greeted with a collection of 5 CDs corresponding to the 5 games the collection contains. From this menu we can launch the games as well as looking at the covers and their descriptions. So we pick the first game, shove it into our very loud CD drive, seriously, get that thing replaced, and launch into the nightmares. Now, out of all of the games in today's video, this was the only one I had played beforehand. In fact, I didn't realise until now that this game was made by this developer. You've probably seen this game at some point on YouTube, as I believe a lot of big YouTubers have played it. This game is called The Other Side. This game hides a dark secret behind its deceptively simple gameplay loop. And deceptively simple is the correct word for it, as the game ramps up in difficulty very quick, and I'll explain why. We start the game and we are greeted with this text. Civil Shelter Guidelines Rule 1. You do not talk about going outside. You do not think about going outside. This place keeps us safe from the dangers of the outside. Out there is death. Out there is nothing. Our character states that they used to believe the lies they were told until an explosion happened and everyone saw outside. Nobody was surprised when all the witnesses disappeared the next day, but they forgot to silence one person. Our player, and we're going to leave our metal prison. It's do or die. And with that, we're spat into the game. Now, from this opening text, we can tell that we are in some kind of fallout shelter or emergency bunker. Something is clearly going to shit outside as we've been ordered to stay inside. But at the same time, maybe it was all a lie done by some technocratic shadow government to keep the people in check. Clearly there is something out there, otherwise the government wouldn't have disappeared all of those people for nothing. As I stated earlier, this game has a deceptively simple gameplay loop. It involves using this automated drill to try and drill through the bunker doors to get outside. You need to make sure that everything on the drill is working. Place it in the robotic arm and start drilling through the double layered door to the outside. Now, occasionally, stuff on the drill may break. The drill bit may shatter, the coolant may run out, the damn thing may run out of batteries because someone cheaped out and got energized instead of Duracell. Stuff like that. The time when you're drilling the first layer is actually quite relaxing and zen. You get into a loop of checking the drill, putting it into the arm and getting it going. It's a simple task, and with every few centimeters the drill chews, you get that much closer to freedom. This entire first bit is basically a tutorial woven into gameplay, which is always a cool thing to see, as not enough developers do it these days. Making it to the end of the first layer, a prompt is put up on the computer saying that by starting to drill the second layer, security will be notified and will be down there within 5 minutes. So we need to be quick. So we confirm it, and the lights go out and come back on blood red. A timer appears and bloody hell, we need to start moving. From here on, the game goes from zen and oddly relaxing to holy fuck, I'm gonna die mode. We need to keep that drill in tip-top condition because every second we waste is a second we will not get back. And I will admit, I could have done this a little quicker, but I was panicking at the time. Also, my first attempt kind of failed because I encountered a glitch where I managed to screw the screw on top of the panel down but open it at the same time, meaning I couldn't close it again upon replacing the oil and coolant. So I had to let the timer run down and do it all over again. But luckily the game saves at the beginning of the second layer, so I only lost around 5 minutes of progress. This game is extremely stressful and the music makes it even worse. It's full of leitmotifs and creepy noises, and it keeps going round and round in circles, constantly reminding you of your ever encroaching and impending doom. Despite all of this, I managed to drill through the door with 2 minutes to spare, and as I chewed the last few centimeters, the lights went out, and there it was. The outside world, green and luscious. Oh, green world, I don't deserve you now. But I'm going to exit this shithole anyway. Walking out of the vault and towards a lone tree, the soundtrack picks up into this happy tone of wonder. We made it. We made it outside and we'll never be controlled by the government ever again. Walking around the tree, there's a note pinned to it. Grabbing it and reading it, it says, "This place isn't what it and the rest of the note is unreadable. The soundtrack suddenly goes back to the same motifs we heard in the bunker, and oh dear lord, it's a mutant spider / squid thing. Get me back in the vault. I'll listen to whatever you say. Please help me. Our pleading is no use as we are inevitably caught by the spider thing and teleported to the credits scene.
Now, I personally think that the ending twist to this game is actually really good. You're led to believe throughout the entire game that the government or the nebulous military force are lying to you and keeping you cooped up in the fallout shelter for absolutely no reason. But of course, they were actually right for once. There is nothing out there but death from the mutant squid thing. I don't even know how to describe it. It looks like a mutant squid thing. Now, I'm pretty sure that this game was the developer's first game, which is very impressive. It's extremely impressive for a first game, but hell, it's even impressive if you're a seasoned developer. It has a super simple yet super intense gameplay loop that steadily gets more and more tense as the minuscule time limit you're provided with slowly ticks down. The background storytelling, the gameplay loop, the twist, and the honestly maddening soundtrack in some cases blends together perfectly. That makes my arsehole tense up like no other game. Personally, I think this was probably the best way to start off this collection because, I mean, start as you mean to go on and start with a banger. Now, let's eject the first disc and move on to the next game.
Just saying, this game has spiders in it, so fair word of warning. The next game we have to look at in this collection is the game Control Room Alpha, which is the shortest game of this collection. The game dumps you in a really small control room with a window looking out onto what seems to be a cave or man-made mine. And when I say small, this control room is literally just this tiny room and an airlock. We get a communication from someone who is assumed to be our handler. He states that,
Control Room Alpha. First of all, congratulations on your new position in the EKRE Foundation. My name is Konstantin, and I will be your supervisor for this shift. Let's start by opening up the nest covering, and then we can get down to business.
So clearly this metal tube is the doorway to a nest, but a nest of what? Well, we shall see. Looking around the room, we can see that it's the year 2047. Maybe we're on some alien planet or in the deepest bowels of the earth looking for resources to exploit for humanity's gain. We open the hatch and this happens. Oh, don't give me that look, I warned you there'd be spiders. Our handler states that we need to get some samples from inside the nest. Clearly we're on some alien planet as 1, I sure as hell hope spiders can't grow to that size on Earth, and 2, spiders don't produce glowing red vials. The next part of the game is basically a claw machine game, but you can't see the process you're looking for and rely only on sensors that are on the crane. The first one is collected without any issue, but as we collect the second one, this happens. As you can tell, I was mildly perturbed by this and sat there for a few seconds contemplating my life choices before resuming my task. As we go to collect the second sample and put it in the receptacle, it falls out of the crane, meaning we need to go down there ourselves and place it in manually. Now, I did this with some trepidation as quite frankly, I'm fine with little money spiders, but anything that's bigger than a 2 pence piece can fuck right off. So I went down there and placed the sample in the holder, and I thought I was in the clear because nothing attacked me, but when I returned to the control room, this happened.
Good job, comrade. We might not have gotten all the samples, but for the first time... What? What is that? Is that some type of thing?
Yeah, I will admit this jump scare caught me quite hard when I first saw it, and because hot damn I was not expecting that. And with that jump scare, the game ends. This is probably the shortest game in the collection, but it's just as good as the others. It raises a lot of questions about the setting of this game. Why are we here? Why are these spiders so fucking big? Why did my dad leave for the milk 5 years ago? None of these questions are really answered, but I like to think we're on some kind of deep space mining colony exploiting a planet for resources. These red sample things are worth a lot of money. Maybe it's because they hold the key to infinite power generation or something equally as beneficial for humanity. But all of this is just speculation as the game doesn't reveal enough to let us know for sure. So with those questions remaining forever unanswered, let's move on to... Now this is one of the longest games in this collection. So, funsies. The beginning of this game starts with papers, please, but from the point of view of the people I sent in the nice men with guns. We hand over our documents and the man behind the counter seems to pause. He tells us to go to shuttle 1 and we comply. We cut to black and re-emerge on a tram system. This oddly unsettling soundtrack plays. It seems to be a mixture of a high and low drone. The journey is a short one as we quickly reach our research station and climb off the tram. Also, if you didn't know this already, this entire opening is a homage to the intro of the 1998 first-person shooter Half-Life, which is a game you should all play because because it brought the gaming industry forward by about 30 years. Viewer, do you play Call of Duty or any other story-based first-person shooter? Yeah, it exists because of Half-Life, which technically wouldn't exist without Quake, which wouldn't exist without Doom. Anyway, we get inside the research station, and we're greeted with this setup. As we enter, we can see the setup clearly is not done, as there is someone still welding equipment together. There's an email on the computer, and we read it. From this, we can tell we are some kind of prison that's been forced to conduct research on so-called pressure-treated organisms. These organisms are from the bowels of the earth and have very interesting properties. We head to our holding cell and wake up the next morning with brand new, slightly rusty equipment. The main gameplay loop of this game involves pulling up a new creature from the depths of hell, it seems, reading their data, mixing an anesthetic for them, which is specific to the organism's class and weight group, and once they're asleep, putting in these weird looking canisters to get data from them. It's an interesting gameplay loop, although it did take me a while to get it right, and I definitely didn't look up a YouTube tutorial. No, definitely didn't. Just look away from this footage. Towards the end of the game, they do throw in a couple more interesting mechanics, like creatures that the computer can't detect properly, which need to be scanned manually, which is cool. As we go through the game, we learn more and more about our job, and on the second to last day, we find that there is a floppy disk that's been hidden in the scanner holster. Placing it in the computer, it reads as such: "We haven't met, but I'm the engineer. I overheard a conversation from the researchers. You're in trouble. I'm working on getting you out. I've taken one of the data cells. You'll find it tomorrow with an X marked on it. Give it to the researchers once you're done. I won't hang around long. It's either tomorrow or never. See you soon." From this disc, we can clearly see that the researchers may have some ulterior motive for what's going on here. Ejecting the disc and hiding it, we continue our job. The next day, I pulled my last specimen, only to find it banging against the container. Oh dear. Clearly, this one is much more hostile than the other specimens and is actively fighting to escape. This presents an interesting new flavour to the spice of game, as now you have to do all your normal tasks that you've become so accustomed to, but now occasionally you have to repair the silo to make sure whatever the hell is inside this thing doesn't escape and turn you into dinner. It took me a couple of failed attempts, but I did it, and when collecting the research, I made sure to use the container with the X marked upon it. Upon giving it to the researcher, everything goes quiet, and then out of nowhere, the door gets blown off its hinges and we're free to leave. Clearly the stranger was right about wanting to bust us out, and that's the end of the game. But what if we didn't use the correct canister? Well, there is an alternative ending that plays out. We get knocked out by the guards and imprisoned in one of the silos, and we are then subject to pressure treating in the bowels of the earth. This raises a lot of questions. Perhaps the last specimen we examined was a pressure treated human as well, damned to the depths of earth for simply being in the wrong place, which could explain why it was so aggressive towards us. And with that, that's the end of Carbon Steel. Now, this next game is probably the most unique of the bunch, and this is because it's the only game in the collection that's entirely in cel-shaded black and white, and it's a really cool art style. This game starts with you at this food machine type of thing, and after getting our government issue rations, we sit down near our fellow neighbours. As we eat, we hear this conversation.
What do you see from your room? What do you see? All I see is a wall. You know someone with roof and rats, right? Really? Yes. So, where are we? I have no idea.
It's an interesting conversation and gives us little insight into the game's setting. Going up to check the roof, we cut to a view of a plane and they state,
"Two players on the roof. Permission to open fire?" What if they jump ship? It won't be unfair. They are going to die anyway.
So clearly the people in these apartment buildings are part of some kind of game. We cut to this new view, and from this point the main gameplay loop properly begins. It's basically Battleship but with buildings. That's pretty much it. It's not that interesting, and the most this game has going for it is the very unique art style. But also maybe I like this game least because I'm terrible at Battleship in real life. As we play, both sides' buildings start to get fewer and fewer, until the game ends, and there's a moment of silence before we hear a shot on the other side of the wall. We open a drawer next to us, and inside is a gun. Clearly we were only here because the government wanted a decent reason to demolish all these buildings. Perhaps there are too many people in this fictional country and the government wants to get rid of everyone but make it look like an accident. This game feels less like a game and more of an artsy talking point for internet people to obsess over. Can't really say anything else, so... Now this one is probably the most interesting of the bunch, probably because it reminds me a lot of the story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which is a good game and also a good story, but just pirate a PDF of it because there is no way in hell you're finding a paperback copy of it. This game starts with this opening text scroll. As far beneath Hades as heaven is above earth, construction began on the foundation of a great computer. Decades later, the first reality of internal torment was initiated by the machine. The year is 2009, and the Tartarus engine was created. Time passed. To prevent workers from exploiting the machine for their personal gain, multiple protective measures were set in place. 4 technicians devised a plan to execute into the night. There is no such thing as absolute security. From this intro text, we know this is a large computer, perhaps used to create virtual worlds. The line, "the first reality of eternal torment was initiated by the machine," makes me think it's some kind of virtual reality machine, perhaps used for prisoners. After all, prisons are expensive, inmates are expensive, so using a simulation where an entire year can pass in a matter of microseconds is better value for money. Plus, it may make rehabilitation easier, as the inmates will be so microwaved to have the IQ of a raw potato. And the line, "there is no such thing as absolute security," is a nice little nod to computer science, because as after all, the weakest link in any cybersecurity program is the end user. We fade in on 4 guys heading down an elevator. One of them lights a ciggy and asks if this will work, and the other one states that it will, as the data rack will allow them to cascade into the engine itself. Okay, just for the sake of the story, this one is Jeff and this one is Tommy. Tommy goes on to state that after many layers, 1 second on Earth will translate into years in the simulation. Jeff asks if they will be able to leave whenever they want, and Tommy replies, of course. We get a name for our character, Harper, and Jeff asks what time it is. This mission is on a strict time limit, as
we're cutting it close, but we don't have enough time. Steel is going to blow the power at midnight. Once the engine automatically reboots, the inmates will be thrown into stasis. It should give us maximum power output, hopefully.
So we need to get our part of the job done quickly. Once the engine restarts, all inmates will be thrown into stasis and their tests will be complete. This should give us maximum power input, but Tommy isn't entirely sure, which is a little concerning considering what this computer is designed to do. The elevator suddenly stops and this guy gets on asking for the circuitry floor, and we happily oblige, acting as nonchalant as possible to avoid suspicion. The other 3 leave at their designated floors, and it's up to us to insert the data rack. Now, throughout this section, I was constantly checking my watch. I didn't want to find out what happens if they cut the power without me fulfilling my part of the job, so I stole through the hallways, constantly eyeing my watch, and eventually made it to this tram system. I keyed in my destination for Pylon 11 and head off through this darkened hallway, and on the other side of it we can see the scale of this computer. It's an absolute behemoth. Eventually the slow as hell tram makes it to Pylon 11, and with a minimal amount of panic I got the data rack in no sweat. I managed to get back to the elevator right as the clock hit midnight and as the power was cut. It came back on quickly enough and I was able to make it back to the others. As soon as we get back, Tommy states they're about to calibrate the device using a test simulation, so we get strapped in sharpish. Tommy types on his keyboards with his mitten hands and says that the test simulation will be the one where you peel potatoes. The machine powers up and we get teleported into this barren room with nothing but a stack of potatoes and a peeler, and Jeff says this.
I don't understand. They managed to translate the nature of consciousness into mathematics and recreate it in a digital interface, yet they use it for this. What even is this?
To me, this has reinforced the fact that all 3 engineers have a certain disdain for this computer's use. Even though this is only a test simulation, it's far from the computer's full potential. Tommy pulls us out of the simulation and states that he is loading the Cascade preset. Clearly this will allow the computer to reach its full potential. Tommy straps in and says,
Warping in 30 seconds. Cascading the engine in itself should exponentially increase the 1.2 factor of time dilation. Our consciousness will be stored in thousands of empty void branches until we reach the final layer.
In layman's terms, time will move faster the deeper into the engine they go. So 1 layer deep is 1.2 times faster, 2 layers deep is 2.4, etc. Their consciousness will be spread through each layer, and once they reach the final layer, they can craft the perfect preset, and the engine will finally reach its full potential. Jeff asks how long the code took to write, but Tommy literally just copy and pasted it off fucking GitHub. Well, that would have been nice to know before you strap me into this Blade Runner looking machine. The jump tries to work, but fails. The other one, turns out it's called Ethan, tries to reach for his keyboard, but can't move. So we warp again. And again and again, warping deeper and deeper, but the machine doesn't stop. It just keeps warping further and further down, and the fate of the 3 engineers is left ambiguous. You know what? Those games are actually surprisingly good. I've no idea why someone would just bury them in under a bridge like that. They're actually surprisingly good, and a lot of them were actually quite scary. That was actually a pretty decent...